I want to talk to you about 3 aspects in which my body has been impacted by living in Albuquerque, New Mexico. First, the rare air up there. I really had no notion of how high Albuquerque was. And Burqueños are quite sure, and I make sure to point out to you, that Albuquerque is higher up than Denver. So it is very high here. And you go up to Sandias, you're at 11,000, 12,000 feet. So you can definitely be impacted by the lack of oxygen. It didn't hit me in any big ways, but it hit me in a lot of small ways. I played a rugby match a couple of weeks into my time here. And, I did fine. I played with a visiting team that needed another guy. And, I was eager to play, but they didn't have enough people, so they started me. Normally, when you come in as a substitute in rugby, they're called whores. You come in as a whore, you're probably not going to start unless they're really desperate for guys, and they were. So I started. Hey, and I was able to play well and make a positive impact. But I did make my excuses. I did just casually mention that I was playing at altitude for the first time. And I'm glad I did, because I used that excuse to take a knee a couple of times, and I really needed a break. But to be quite honest, I hadn't played in over a year. I don't know, it was hard to tell where the lack of oxygen started and my lack of fitness began. There wasn't really anything about the experience where I thought, yeah, this is definitely the altitude. Maybe if I were a little more fit, I'd have a better way to judge that. But some things that did happen, I had a little headache for 6 weeks, 2 months, just kind of constantly there a little bit. And, I think that was the lack of oxygen as my body got used to it. It's like this really mild altitude sickness, mild but long-lasting. It was kind of odd. I do think that was the altitude. And then the other thing, what was the other thing I was going to mention? Pause. Oh yeah, the other thing, an obvious one. Shortness of breath, not during any sort of strenuous activity, but afterwards. Like, I might hustle to get somewhere, or carry something somewhere and not notice any difference. But then after I was done, realize, hey, I'm out of breath, surprisingly. So you definitely notice the rarefied air. The sun's another one, and this is, kind of touching on stuff I've talked about before. But, kind of standing out in the sun, under shade, under hats all day, but not really doing anything, but you get home and you're absolutely blasted. So, you definitely notice the radiation more. That sounds weird to say, but it's true. And when people talk about humidity versus dryness, I'm comfortable in humid climates. It's nice. Right now it's in the 90s and it does not feel like it. The clouds are out. But beyond that, the humidity makes the heat feel heavier for sure. That being said, I often kind of use the line, I'd rather be in a sauna than an oven. So, the dry heat has its own slow burning way of getting you. But you definitely notice, and I've met a lot of New Mexicans who studiously avoid the sun. Not everybody does, but just really studiously avoid the sun. Even in the meetup, even the meetup that I had at La Cumbre, someone waited inside for us to come inside when we eventually did. And I thought it was a wonderful day, but I think it actually would have been more polite and politic in this climate to have just started inside. You definitely notice the sunshine. So I've talked in some of my other videos about how I'm always thirsty. Well, that's gone away. But when I first moved here, I was always thirsty. The dry air gets you, it cracks your skin. I haven't got to the point where I use lotion. I haven't had any skin cracks since my first few weeks here. I think my skin has adapted. But it is always drier than I expect it to be. And people use lotion here. Oh, maybe at some point I'll start using lotion. I just hate how that stuff feels. Yerg. But here's the way, and if I've said this in a previous video, I apologize, but the way I measure when a place is dry, and I actually developed this amazing barometer of humidity. Barometer of humidity. Why would I use something that's used for weather to talk about weather, and it's the wrong aspect? Anyway, this amazing gauge of humidity. So I moved from Florida to Idaho back in the day. Here, one of my kids is going to talk to me. I'm going to press pause. I moved from Florida to Idaho back in the day. And not the super dry part of Idaho either, but definitely much drier. Up in northern Idaho, much, much drier than Florida. And I noticed, for the first time in years, like since I'd been a kid, I had boogers. I hadn't thought about it, but boogers had passed out of my life. In Florida, you don't really get boogers. It's always so moist up there in the mucal membranes. Not in Idaho, and definitely not here. I mean, booger production is through the roof. Just really like kicks up. I haven't been stopped up. The air here is so wonderful. I didn't have any allergy problems, which a lot of people around here have. I mean, I've had clear nasal passages ever since I got here, which is wonderful. But definitely, every once in a while, you got to reach up in there and draw something out. I'm sorry if that's super gross. My wife hates that I talk about it. But, yeah, not moist up in there anymore. So, those are the ways that my body has been affected by being in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The oxygen thing, when I was getting ready to move here and watching YouTube videos, the altitude thing is definitely an adjustment. The sun is what I'd be ready for. And, if you're coming out here. But yeah, I'd be curious to know from you Burqueños, those issues and any other issues, what do you all do to handle them? Are your bodies just fine-tuned machines optimally adapted to the environment? All right, so answer that in the questions, in the comments below. Drop me some tips and pointers to pass on to the family. All right, the peace of Christ be upon you.